everybody. Welcome back to Compton's Corner. I'm William Dakota Compton. I'm a teacher, local city commissioner, and a Democratic candidate for Congress here in Kentucky's 2nd Congressional District.
And I'm Spencer Keck here in Hardin County. I'm running for magistrate and would love your vote.
And
Today
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Today we're talking about something that built the backbone of America, our unions. The reason we have weekends, the reason we have safer workplaces, the reason working folks have a voice when corporate profits start rising but paychecks don't. Unions aren't about division, they're about dignity. They're about fairness, about making sure a day's work earns a day's pay. So today, we're going to dive into what unions really mean for Kentucky, for everyone who puts in an honest day's work. And to join us to talk about unions, we have Becky Staley and Randy Whelan. And if I said your name wrong, I completely apologize. With our local UAW 3047. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
Thank y'all for being here. So, like I said, our topic today is about unions. So I will start you all off. Y'all are the expert. So what is a union?
So basically, a union is just a collective of the workers. It is an organization where we rally the workers together to help stand up against corporations and management, because let's face it, what their interest is not what is normally in the best interest for workers. So we're the backbone, really, of helping wages rise in Kentucky and all across America, really.
And not just with unions, but all wages across the country. We work for Better Workers legislation, but as for being a union itself, we work for our members to have better working conditions, wages, and benefits within our plant, and hopefully that will expand out to the other factories around the area and across the country.
So just so you get an idea, the state of Kentucky is about 8.8% of union members, and that includes wage and salary workers, which what Randy and I are, we're wage workers hourly, which is what most of us working people are, right? Yeah. But there's also an additional 41,000 people in the state of Kentucky that benefit from a contract, whether they are unionized or not. Right. And so what's really important about that is because we are so strong, we help raise others around us that aren't even a part of our organization.
Right. Well, example is when the Big Three struck in 862, UAW 862 out of Louisville struck, and they got better wages and working conditions within their plant, and they got their 8-year tier program down to, was it 3 or 4 years, that even it affected the non-union plants like the Toyota plant in Georgetown, basically followed that path so they could not have their workers go union. So it affected them and helped them, but we would prefer that they would be organized so they could help themselves, because that's a big part of UAW is that when you go into when you want a union or you want better wages and working conditions, you try to form that union yourself, and with the help of the UAW, you can do that.
Yeah. So before we go on to anything else, I do want you to just explain a little bit about UAW, since you are a part of that union, and what that kind of entails in the workforce. Because I still have people going, UAW, what is that when I talk about it?
It's United Auto Workers, but it's also United Agricultural, Aerospace, Agricultural, and Industry Workers, but of America. But we also encompass grad students from several states, Las Vegas and other places, the car dealers.
We have car dealers, we have lawyers, so predominantly we do represent the auto workers, but we also have sectors all across the board. Like I said, I've met lawyers, paralegals that are UAW. I've even met some salary people that are UAW, which is very good because that shows us there's language there to expand upon. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And I know when we're talking about unions, we're not just talking about just the UAW. We're talking about all of our unions.
You're
I
talking
know,
steel workers. You're talking
yes,
CWA,
yeah, an IUE,
pipe
CWA.
fitters.
Yeah, that's UA 502 in this area here. And let's see,
Which we'll touch
Teamsters,
on.
so on and so forth.
We'll touch on a little bit later why we know all of these names
Right.
and why they're so important to us. Because
Well, I belong to one of the largest unions in the state, which is
yes,
the teachers union. So I
yeah,
belong to
yes.
JTA because I teach in Louisville.
we actually had a really powerful women's summit earlier this year, and we had a whole bunch of different unions there. JTA was part of them. I didn't know that we had a tenants union, which was a union
Oh,
that is to help prevent tenants from the people that are renting to them raising their rent,
Right.
or just being. We've all had a landlord or know someone that's had a landlord that wasn't up and up. And so that was a really powerful way for us to sit down with different unions and understand what each of us are facing in the state of Kentucky, because auto workers don't necessarily see the same things that teachers see,
Right,
but we're all ultimately fighting for the same thing.
exactly.
And that's
Well,
what unions are. We are the ones that stand up for the workers and fight for the workers to have better health, wages, time off. You name it, we try to argue for it.
And
awesome.
the first
KEA, and my son is part of KEA in Jefferson County too. And I just wanted to give a shout out to them because they are the strong. The Jefferson County part of KEA is stronger than most around the state, and they get a pretty decent contract for a lot of that. And I'm really proud that happens. And
they make my teacher experience amazing. I've taught at other schools, and we did not have the representation power that JTA has. It seemed like it was more just a afterthought. We weren't able to really negotiate with power like JTA does. And my first union that I belonged to was AFGE. I'm sure right now they're going through some tough times. That's the government employees union.
Yes.
And I first joined that when I was working at the VA in Montana. And if it had not been for them, I had some really horrid management, and I would have been let go for trying to help veterans out every chance I got. I'm going to bat for them. And some of the staff did not like that because they wanted to see fewer patients, not more. But I'm an Afghanistan vet, first Gulf War vet. I couldn't stand to see my fellow vets mistreated that way. And thank goodness for the AFGE union. They went to bat for me, and I was able to keep on, plugging for those veterans that I was working for on the VA.
Yeah.
This is a great segue to the second talking point of why are our unions important, especially in our current political environment?
So that's really a good question, especially in Kentucky. So what we have learned over our experience is a lot of times they will name the laws that sound really, really good, but they're actually not beneficial. So Kentucky is a right to work state. And that sounds like it should be good, right? But it's actually not. It was passed in 2017, and what it essentially does is it tears down. It's a union busting bill at its baseline. What it does is it creates the ability for people to participate or get the benefits of a union
without participating,
without paying dues. And where we see that affecting us is then we don't have as many people when it's time to stand up, or when it's time, we don't have as much money because we don't have as many members. We have a lot of people freeloading. And whenever we don't have that financial power and that bargaining power, then we can't negotiate better contracts. In our local's last contract, we got, 16 pages of new safety regulations, new safety language.
I think it was more like 10 or 11, but we had other things added into other articles Article 62 in our contract is our health and safety, but we had other stuff added in other parts of articles that deal with safety also.
And all of that comes back to understanding who we're voting for. It's understanding who we're putting in office and where they stand. And so as people that stand up for workers, we have to be a vital part of saying, hey, this is what's actually going on. This person that's passing this bill says this is what it actually means.
And this is what it's doing to you and your families. It was Walter Reuther, who was president of the UAW until 1970, said that the ballot box affects the bread box. I'm not giving you the whole quote, just the basics, which means is who you vote for affects your wallet.
Oh yeah,
and it's affected in a big way.
And the important
Can I add something there?
Sure.
So, as a teacher, I'm certified to teach 3 different things. One of them is social studies. I teach English language arts. And I was appalled, teaching in Hardin County previously. I assigned my students to do a little report on the Harlan County wars and Blair Mountain, of course, Harlan County, Eastern Kentucky, Blair Mountain in West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And they wrote, they found Union in the camp and Confederates. Yeah. And I'm like, guys, pardon me just a second. Did you read what year that was? Yeah. And they're like, 1921. I'm like, yeah. So the Confederates were long gone. The Civil War had been over in 1865. And that's the problem is, we have a state where people were killed in order to be able to unionize and able to have this right to fight for their own rights that you guys were just talking about. And yet a whole generation has no clue what that meant, what it entailed, that their grandparents were involved in it, their aunts and uncles were involved in it, and it's just erased from memory altogether. It seemed like, one governor was able to do that in 2014?
So, 2017, but you were talking about the Hardin County wars. That is one of the main things that helped bring about the NLRA Act of 1935, which is National Labor Relations Act, which it's also known as the Warren Act, gave us the right to form unions. And it was a good deal all the way up until 1947, where they gave companies the right to fight unions and Taft-Hartley. So, but it's been the NLRA Act. Without it, we would not have the law behind us, and they could continue to do things that they did to people who were fighting to get unions before that.
Yeah.
And Whelan, by things they did to people, that was sending in Pinkerton agents.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a private army sent in by these company owners. And they had mounted machine guns.
Yes.
And they fired on men, women, and children in these Union camps.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also had biplanes fly over and drop bombs on them. That's what they did to them, to their own citizens.
Yes. And they framed it like they were the bad people, that they were the bad guys.
Exactly.
When the reality was they want what we still want today.
Right.
They want a fair wage for a fair day's pay for a fair day's work.
Because the company
and safety measures that you talked about too. The safety measures in the mine were not there.
Because I believe it was erased. You were talking about a lot of that past and that history being erased.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that people don't understand, and it still is happening in Eastern Kentucky today and in West Virginia. That's a lot of their bread and butter. Going down into these coal mines are dangerous, dangerous jobs. People, the black lung, that was no joke. We still have living people. This is how close to now that this is. There are still people alive today that participated in that, or their children and grandchildren participated in that. They have black lung. You hear the canary in a coal mine.
Mm-hmm.
They were canaries.
Yep.
And they had enough, because a lot of people don't understand what script paper is. Mm-hmm. That's how the company would pay them. Mm-hmm. And you could only use script paper in the company store.
Yeah. The companies would come in and buy up If they didn't buy up your land, they bought up the mineral rights to your land, which was basically the same thing. And they would basically come in and take over your property. What they did is they built these towns called, we call them company towns. And they let you stay in the house and all this. They thought it was wonderful if you worked in the mine. And they had a company store. Well, at the time, they didn't even have to pay you. She's talking about script paper. They would write down what they owed you. But when you went to the company store, you had to buy your own equipment, your own safety stuff, all of that stuff. And you always ended up owing the store more than they owed you. So it was
surprise. Yeah.
Now,
Tennessee Ernie Ford, right? Oh, my
Exactly.
soul to the company store.
now to say that doesn't still happen today is not true. They might not be holding guns and sending bombs, but they're sending union busters. You both know, y'all are very active with us here in Kentucky. You know about the recent fight with Blue Oval. They brought in and spent as much money on union busters to deter these people for voting in a union that would benefit them. Because let's look at the facts. In right to work states, typically lower wages, fewer benefits, and higher workplace injuries. That's what
it means. It means right to work for lower pages.
Yes.
The opposite of what it means.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they're sending in their union busters. They just aren't armed like they used to be. And I think it's important for people to understand that. And when you have politicians in office, this is where we are really strong at standing up for. If you have someone in office that is going to be pro-union, they're going to do more to say, hey, no, that's not right. We're standing up for the workers. And that's where we have to come in and be like, all right, let's see, where do you stand with working people?
Yeah.
Wasn't the previous labor secretary a union man in the last administration?
Yes. Yeah. Before, actually, you're talking under Biden. He was, and then he left office, and then somebody else came in after him for about a year. I can't think of his name though, but he was in a union.
He was part of the AFL-CIO.
Very union friendly. He was labor secretary. Yes.
Yeah. I was extremely pleased with that.
Now, I will say the talk of getting rid of unions in Kentucky, I feel like happened before 2017, because I graduated from high school in 2012, and not once, other than speaking about Union and Confederate armies in the Civil War, is the only time we mentioned unions in my school. Yeah, and that was the only time we mentioned unions. And it wasn't until I started teaching did I start hearing about KEA and unions. And the conversation from some of my coworkers were, "Don't do it. They just take your money, and you get nothing from them."
And that's the reality of what we face a lot, especially in a right to work state, because people grab that tagline and they say, right to work. Oh, well, sure, I don't have to pay union dues. They still have to represent me, right? Which is true, but it weakens us all. Because just like what happened with the Big Three strike, when everything that they got in their contract helped the workers around them, other factories, other facilities that have similar outputs had to raise their wages to prevent those people from leaving. So that's where we've really had to step up and learn, how do we make this make sense to people to where they understand it's actually a benefit for them.
I have a really good example of that currently. My wife and I, when I retired from the military, I didn't come straight back to Kentucky, where I'm from. Went to work in Montana. I was working for the VA there, and my wife went to work for Costco. And Costco in Billings, Montana, it was a good place to work. They started her off, I think, $20 an hour, maybe somewhere around there. And then we moved to Helena. It was also good. But when she moved to San Diego for a bit after Montana, and I came back over here, she was part of a Costco that had a union. The ones in Montana didn't. And just like you're saying, every time that union store in Southern California negotiated for better wages, that rose the wages for all the Costco's nationwide, not just in California. So I think it was either this year or last year, the union in California went on, they went on strike, did a negotiation. Or I'm not sure if they had a strike. They negotiated with Costco. And my wife was already back over here living and working at the Costco in Louisville. And she now is up to $32 an hour as an hourly employee because of the union,
Yes.
and Costco has great benefits, but that union helps out too, at the end of that.
Big factor. It's also a big factor that Costco is fairly union friendly because the former owner that retired, his father was a steel worker or something, best of memory. Yes.
And he was very, very pro his labor in his company. He's like, people, they kept trying to tell him, hey, you can, if you'll take, away these benefits or lower these benefits, you can make your shareholders more money. He's like, look, if I'm worried about the shareholders, my employees are not going to be satisfied. They're not going to work as hard. And my company is not going to last 100 years. I'm wanting a company that will last, not just for short-term gains for people playing the stock market.
Exactly.
And that, again, that plays right into, like you're saying, the union idea. We want these things to be around for a while.
And typically, a lot of unions are very big in the democratic process. We have, we call it VCAP, which is the Voluntary Citizens Action Program. And that's where we can actually take a portion of our paycheck and it goes into a fund. So that way, the way that this fund works, the CAP committee is they vet pro-union nominees, candidates.
Right. The UAW in particular sends out surveys to these candidates, and they're supposed to return them. That's part of the process to see where they stand on certain working families issues and workers' rights issues, and then determine whether we get behind those candidates or not.
And the good thing about that is, like, obviously Randy and I are super into politics, so we kind of know the up and up, but a lot of people don't. And so that's an easy way to where they can say, hey, I'll send $25 a month of my paycheck to this committee. And they know that their money, that their donation is going in to fully vetted. And it doesn't matter if you're running for any position, president, all the way down to mayor or whatever, they are all vetted the same.
Right.
And we know they're pro labor. They're for the working people.
And we've when we vet them, it does not political party does not factor in so much as where you stand for workers. So we have, obviously there's more Democrats that support and it's the way it's been than Republicans, but we have supported Republicans who have supported us.
Which is a misnomer because you will hear predominantly that unions are mostly Democrats. It just so happens that most of the Democrats are the ones that support workers' rights.
Right.
That support families. So it's no accident. It's just when we support workers' rights, we're going to go for the candidate that we know support what we stand up for the same things we do, which is every working person.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you two were mentioning, the plant Blue Oval SK.
Yes.
I know that you live in Hardin County as well as I do, or you work in Hardin County. So what is going to happen there? What does it look like? Are we going to have more union labor there? And
okay, so technically the union has won the election, but there is some ballots that are being contested.
41. Mainly
because these people were allowed to vote after the deadline was set for them to. They had a deadline to say this is how many people is going to vote in this election, and they tried to put these 41 in after the fact. My understanding.
Can I expand on that?
By all means.
So the reason there was a deadline for the people, you had to be hired by a certain date to be able to vote, is because the very first thing that they were doing to these people when they were bringing them in was doing anti-union propaganda. Mm-hmm. They had brought in their union busters.
Capped it all.
So you have 18, 19, 24-year-olds that have never heard of a union, And they're
Yes.
saying they're blaming fatalities at UAW plants on being unionized,
Right.
which was disgusting and despicable.
They did
for
that
us
to
That's
our-
ludicrous. You know, absolutely
It's
ludicrous.
awful. Yeah.
It is ludicrous. So that's why there was that date set. So that way it gave them the opportunity to talk to them and for them to make an educated decision. So those 41 votes, I don't see where they'll go, but as you know, the NLRB has been gutted under this administration.
which is the National Labor Relations Board, and they're the ones who make the decisions. And since it's been gutted, they've been basically stalemated into they can't really make any decisions until they have some type of quorum, which they need 3 out of 5 individuals on that specific committee to do that, and they don't have that yet.
So until we get that back, we're probably going to be in limbo.
Now, guys, my dad was also a union member. He lived in Eastern Kentucky and was with the pipe fitters union out of Ashland, welding and pipe fitters union. I've noticed that they're doing a lot of work in Louisville, building plants and things as they go in there. So I know that Louisville has a very strong union presence, and it seems like very pro-union. And I'm real pleased. I'm pleased to see that, here in Hardin County, we've got you guys with your own UAW hall too. It's not just, Louisville. Can you tell us about the history of UAW union here and all unions here in Hardin County?
Well, one of the UAWs that was here before us was Bowman Industries, and what they did, and that was Finus. I can't think of Finus's last name. He's the president. What they did was they did a lot of NASCAR stuff and things of that nature. And we became union in 2004. We just celebrated 20 years last year. And let's see.
That's in Tulsa.
Yeah, but even E-Town as itself is Elizabethtown, however you want to say it. We had E-Town here. Also, at one time, we had Gates Rubber had not only United Steelworkers, they had the rubber workers. There's pipe fitters here. There's pipe fitter here too, and iron workers and stuff. And we'd like to at some point get a local council together and start reviving that. It's just and then the IUE CWA is also here because they rent space in our hall to have their meetings. But we'd like to get that together at some point. It's just that me and Becky are pretty spread out. We don't have a lot of time to do a lot of things because we're doing a lot of union things for the union.
I hear you.
Our local, we really do try to do as much as we can out in the community and stuff. But our local is really unique because we have a very strong contract. And it's so frustrating to see the people on our floor that are they don't understand what we have. I know you will understand. We're one of the few UAW locals that has a negotiated pension and 401k.
That is awesome.
Awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah.
Very rare. It was negotiated in at a time, was it
2007 in the contract.
And with this last contract negotiation, for the first time ever, we got a raise on our pension.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And, we really tried to educate a lot of young members that don't understand what pensions or 401ks are. But to have both negotiated in, these 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they could be set.
Well, guys, do you realize that the military now doesn't even have a pension anymore? It's only got the equivalent of a 401k. Yeah, so that means that you've got one of the very few jobs left that has a pension.
Yes.
And that's incredible.
Yes.
That means so much for your life.
The thing is education, and we're trying to educate people all the way around, not just ours, but everybody else. And we've helped the Starbucks people with their union here in E-Town too. But we're trying to get people educated. Now, you were talking about when you were in school. When I was in school in the 70s, they were still teaching unions in the school, and we still had a citizenship class.
Man.
My class was the last citizenship class that it took in high school before they ended the citizenship program, which was specifically about our American government and how it works and how the local and state governments work too. And
Randy, which school was that?
That was for me. It was Meade County.
It was the little
Wow.
out in the
Wow.
It was Meade County, and
I love it.
they didn't touch on the details of unions. They talked about unions and how and things of that nature as to how they formed and stuff. So, plus it doesn't hurt that your grandfather and your dad were UAW members at International Harvester.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know, and the only person in my life that talked about unions was my grandmother. And it was with Holly Carburetor here in Bowling Green
Wow.
when they tried to unionize. And she would always tell me that my great grandmother would told her son who was working there with her, it was like, if you vote for that Billy, I'm not going to let you come to Thanksgiving, because she fell for that propaganda.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think they did get to unionize, if I remember correctly.
Taft-Hartley from 1947, which is a law that has allowed companies to intensely fight with little consequence for people to form unions. They basically use scare tactics to scare them into voting out of what's really in their best interest. They tell them they're a third party. There's a third party coming in and tell you what to do, which is not the case with UAW. You all negotiate. We give you, the International gives you help, but you negotiate your own contract at your own plant. That's the way it works. It's us to them.
There is often the misnomer of the union as this outlying entity. When I heard a really good thing at the Women's Summit, and it was actually a JTA teacher. She said a lot of people treat unions like a soda machine.
Right.
They want to put their dues in and they want to receive a product. When in fact, where we've been lacking is we need to treat our union membership as a gym membership. We put in the money, but then we go in and we put in the work and we come out stronger, not just for ourselves, but for each other. Because we have a saying in the UAW, a rising tide lifts all boats. Yep. And we truly believe that, and we stand by that.
And it's stronger for your families. It's working family just does so much better with that union pay and union benefits.
Yep.
We meet a lot of people in our journeys with that it's second, third generation UAW member. And it's so nice to see mother and daughter or father, son come to conferences together and both of them be in a union, because that tells me that parent taught them what was important. They saw growing up how much better their lives were because of being in a union.
Yeah. And when we wear this logo and we're representing, people will come up to ask us about it, which is wonderful because we get to explain what they don't get to hear.
And Randy
in
loves
the media.
to talk.
Yes, wait.
Well, it's just crazy when I drive around here in Bowling Green. I'll see UAW or Teamsters bumper stickers everywhere.
Well, you have the Corvette plant.
Yeah, that's UAW 2164.
Yes, and so we'll see that, and of course you'll have different political stickers everywhere else, and you're thinking, I'm glad you're supporting the union. And I've talked to a couple of them, and they'll go, if you don't support the union, I'm not voting for you. I don't care who you are.
And
I got another E-Town question for you guys, or Hardin County question.
All right.
So I know that it was just reported that there was a brake plant here. Was it Akebono? I think it was a Japanese company, wasn't it? That is going to lay off 450 workers as it closes down. What would those workers have been able to do if they had been a union plant, a union company? Because I know they weren't.
One of the things is they would have been able to negotiate a severance package in their contract, or they would have been able to negotiate out, have it in the contract where they would negotiate some sort of severance package, or they could have negotiated to where they could. I mean, it depends on how strong your members are. I mean, they could have negotiated where the stuff comes to that plant before it leaves somewhere else. Those we've had those things occur.
But we've also had it occur to where they negotiate in their contract to where if this facility shuts down, you get to transfer to another facility, keep your seniority, keep your pay, or sometimes upgraded depending on the facility.
Yes, it's called transfer rights, and the big three generally have those. So if a Ford plant is
Yep.
idle right now, like say the one, the LAP plant, which is going idle, they're either going on unemployment, or they have the right to go to another plant, and some of them are going up north to the other plant to work.
Well, and sometimes we have seen where if you have two locals close to each other,
Mhm.
And one is shutting down for whatever reason, they will kind of partner up with the other local and say, hey, we're about to lay off 450 workers. How can we work together to transition them to your plant?
Right.
To that way they're not uprooting their entire lives. So with a union, basically in a nutshell, the possibilities are endless versus they just got a letter saying, hey, your last day of production is going to be X day.
It's how
And there's
strong you are. It's how
nothing more terrifying, right, than to have to start all over again, like you were saying.
All over.
Right.
All
Some people
over.
have made this their careers.
See, my dad, when the International Harvester closed down in Louisville, Kentucky, he had to go to Indianapolis to finish. But because they had a UAW contract, he took his seniority to that plant with him. He had 20 years in at the time, and he took that seniority with him, and he finished and retired 38 years with it ended up being Navistar, but 38 years with International Harvester, and retired with a pension. He didn't even have a 401k, but his pension was so good, and the Social Security on top of it, he makes more than I do now, or he did.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep.
God
So-
rest his soul.
So moving on to our last topic, we hear a lot of politicians and a lot of people say, well, we stand in solidarity with our local unions, and I just want to get your opinion. What does solidarity mean to us? What does that look like to you all as UAW members, and how can we stand and support you all moving forward?
So that's a very good question. For us, when we say we stand in solidarity, we don't mean just with UAW Local 3047 members. I know both of you have seen us on multiple picket lines,
Yep.
regardless of whether it was UAW. You have seen us at multiple rallies, many protests, and just like you two, every time we show up at these, we are standing up for the workers of Kentucky. And so for us, what we look for when we're looking at candidates, it's, are you willing to fight for the same things that we fight for? Whenever Monument Chemical went on strike, we went out there every single week and stood with them. And we met some of you out there on that picket line.
Exactly.
And so we know then that you're not just saying, hey, I support unions. You show up and you listen and you talk to us and you understand, because what people usually like to put in the media are, oh, these workers are greedy, or, oh, these workers don't deserve this, or they don't deserve that. The reality is they're standing up to corporate greed. Because in what world is it okay for a CEO to make 364 times hours?
Boy, I was just going to say that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's so much more than $25 an hour or $32 an
So,
hour.
like
Yep.
she was saying, we stood on picket lines. We stood on 862's picket line for them. When we went down to Monument Chemical, they had 3 different unions. 2 of them out, 1 of them in, 1 of them came back out, went back in. There was the UA 502 pipe fitters and the IBEW 369 electrical workers were in that plant. And the 3rd one is SIEU. And we went down there almost every weekend to stand, at least some of us did, to stand down there with them and picket until they either went back in and got their contract or what else have you. And we also recently went up when the GE Aerospace was up in Erlanger, Kentucky on strike. We went up there and stood picket line with them.
Starbucks here in Hardin County. Not all Starbucks are unionized. That's not common knowledge, but some are. And they did a 1-day strike. Randy and I had been at work all day. We keep protest signs in our car.
Yep.
Just because that's who we are. And we heard they were on strike, and we went and we stood with them. And we listened to what they were fighting for, and we listened to what they're standing up for. And there's a common theme. There's a common theme amongst all workers in Kentucky, regardless of whether you're Starbucks, regardless of whether you're Monument Chemical, or even the big three. We all want the same thing. We all want fair wages. We want to go home safe. We have lost too many people. People have been too seriously injured.
Right.
And we want to be treated fairly. We speak up equally for everyone. We want everyone to have the same across the board, equal pay, equal benefits, time off to spend with their family,
Right.
and to go home safe. That's what we stand for.
And so what was the outcome of that one-day strike?
So that was a targeted series of one-day strikes. So it was part of a broader movement to where
they had changed CEOs from one that was fairly union friendly to one that was pretty much against unions. And they after getting them to buy, in this case, and this is just a small case, there was many more factors, but one of the cases was that they had required them to buy certain uniforms. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then when they bought the uniforms, they changed the uniforms to make them buy other uniforms.
So they
it's little things like that, but there's bigger things involved also.
They were required with their own money to purchase Starbucks brand uniform.
Yep.
And then within like a month or so, they outlawed that.
Yep.
They banned being able to wear those things. So essentially, they were negotiating in bad faith.
Yes.
Now, the last that we heard of that, they were still trying to come to terms with negotiations.
And they were doing that during negotiations, which is technically a no-no with the NLRB. You're not supposed to be able to change any of those conditions. But this guy apparently didn't care. So
right. Well, what happened to the Heine Brothers coffee? I know they were striking in Louisville. Remember that one? Did they get to unionize?
I didn't hear. What did he say?
What'd you say?
Heine Brothers coffee in Louisville.
Coffee. Now,
remember they were trying to unionize.
They did unionize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure. And I remember at the Women's Summit, they were talking about trying to get, because there's a bunch of coffee chains in Louisville, and each of them have their own individual contracts. Some aren't unionized.
Some are franchised, probably.
Yeah. But the ones that are unionized, they're trying to line all of their contract expiration dates to the same. So that way they're kind of all on the same page, even if they're slightly different. That was awesome. The last I'd heard from them.
And that's what May 1st, 2028 is about. They're trying to, the UAW and other unions are trying to align all of their contracts to end on that day. Ours as an independent parts supplier, because we supply independent parts to Ford in particular, ours is, we got a 3-year contract where others are getting 4-year contracts on this last contract. And ours ends May 1st of 2027. So it's going to be difficult for us to end one in 1 year. So we'll see how all that goes. But the whole point is to, we're stronger together. And if we move together, so to speak.
Yeah. And I will say, here in Bowling Green, when the local UAW 2164 went on strike, I think it was, I just looked up,
2019.
Yes. I remember driving by that and seeing people honking and like, yeah, thank you. And I remember seeing people taking up donations to get some water for them because it was hot.
William, I stood on that picket line too.
I love it. But just seeing the amount of people who supported them standing up for a better workplace condition back then, and now hearing some people talk about unions in a bad light now, it's like light and day here. And it's just shocking the change that I've seen here with that.
Look, with us, it's we over me. because we are always stronger than me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do want to brag on one of our rural counties, and I double checked just to make sure I got the correct union. But I do want to say I'm proud of Butler County unionizing the real alloy plant in Morgantown with the Teamsters.
Good deal.
So they did that back in April. So it's the first labor union that Butler County has had.
Wow.
So I just wanted to point that out. I'm really proud of them for.
So that
being
is
able
going
do
to
that.
be so beneficial for that entire community,
Mhm.
because when workers have better wages and safer working conditions, they spend more money locally, and everywhere around them is going to rise. That is fantastic news for that area.
Oh, yeah.
And it should improve the wages of the other surrounding factories or whatever they have there, or other retail shops and stuff. And as she said, there'd be more participation in the community that way, because the money is there, instead of driving to E-Town or driving to Bowling Green or Owensboro to spend their money.
And can I ask you guys a question?
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, guys?
Sure.
Do you have any communication with the unions on Fort Knox? Since I know they're going through terribly hard times right now with this furlough.
To be honest, we have not. That is not that we don't want it.
Yeah.
We just, as I said, that's why we want a local rural council in Elizabethtown. We'd like to form one. We're busy. We are busy with a lot of stuff, but we want to, so we could get together and talk these issues out, so we can help each other.
Because when Starbucks went on strike and we showed up, they didn't know who we were at first. And they said, someone said you need to connect with the local unions, but they had no idea what any of the local unions are. And that's
right.
having people come out and be like voices for these different unions and coming together. Because we have union members right down the road that we don't know about, or they don't know about us, or we don't communicate. And we're already good at organizing.
Mhm.
We're already good at bringing people together. Imagine if we bring in all of the unions together.
It would just make us stronger, not in the area, but within the state itself.
Yeah.
It just would, because it would draw in all these unions together to work together to focus on not just politics, but wages and benefits and working conditions for
OSHA
everybody
standards.
around. OSHA standards, particularly, especially
yeah.
since Kentucky passed a HB 398, which basically waters down Kentucky's stronger OSHA language than what the federal government have, and now we have to go by what the regular OSHA regulations are, and it's really weakened it to where we have been told that we have to contact somebody in Alabama from the federal government to come up here to inspect OSHA-wise, instead of our local guy in Frankfurt.
But now,
That's
you
insane.
speaking of OSHA, that is something a union contract can do.
Mm-hmm.
We can negotiate better conditions than what the state and federal laws allow.
Right.
And those are legally binding documents. So even though all of this craziness with what's going on in this administration, and especially with the health areas, we can actually negotiate above that and protect our workers even beyond what state and federal laws are at the time.
And then we negotiate to get the company to agree to it. And as long as the company agrees to it, we're good. And sometimes that involves a strike. Sometimes it does not. It just depends.
But that also goes to show you why we have to stand up for why it's so important to make sure that we're electing people that aren't passing these bills to start with.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a question for you all, and it's been
All right.
It's on my mind.
Yeah.
The grievance procedure, we have one in our contract, and to state that our contract is not a handbook that that the company gives you benefits. It doesn't work that way. We've negotiated all those benefits, but the grievance procedure is a procedure that we go through if there's a problem in communication, so to speak, to where the company may misinterpret something in the contract and try to do something that violates that contract. Could be us too, but more likely it's the company. And that we go through, we have a 4-step procedure to go through to try to work it out and get it resolved. So my question to you is, and I just want to explain that to people who may not know that out there, but my question is does anybody know what the first grievance ever written was?
Oh,
Was that towards? I'll let you go, Spencer. You're the social studies teacher.
Oh man,
I have an idea, but I'll let the social studies teacher answer this one.
Did it involve automobiles or no?
No.
No, I'm pretty sure.
I think I've told William this. He may know because I told him, I think.
Wasn't it us towards Great Britain, towards the King of Britain?
You're very good. The first grievance ever written in this country was the Declaration of Independence. It was a grievance against King George III, if anybody bothers to read the rest of it. So what we did is we formed a union to solve the issue. So the first union in the United States is the United States.
Union States.
Yes. You know, that is a great point for us. We're coming up on 52 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So real quick, Becky and Randy, any last closing remarks you all have?
I think we've covered a lot of good things today. When you're negotiating a contract, remember that it is a legally binding document that both the company and the union agree to. It's not always perfect. It's not always what I want or what they want. It's what we can live with together and go forward. With that said, the stronger you are, generally the better contract you're going to get. So you have to be united in this. And that includes what we've said about the right to work law, which people who opt out, we don't want them to, but even though they have the right to do it, it really hurts the position of their union to be able to negotiate because it involves money to do it. It's just that simple. We have to do the research. We have to do all the legwork to everything that has to be presented. What we have to talk to our members what they want, put out surveys. All of this stuff does cost money, but it's for the better good of the whole as a union.
Yeah.
I just want to say that we are all stronger together, and that goes beyond the union. That goes out in our communities, that goes statewide, that goes countrywide. I know things are really dire out there right now, but that requires us all coming together. And let's talk about how we can be better together instead of how we can tear each other apart.
Right.
And unions bring a big part of that, because a big thing we didn't touch on, and we won't for time, so don't even start, was we were big advocates in the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
And that means we've got to carry the torches that our grandparents and parents carried outside of the walls of work.
The I Have a Dream speech, I'm just going to say this, that Martin Luther King made in March of '63 was written at UAW Solidarity House in Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah.
You can find photos of him with Walter Reuther, which was our 4th international president. He's actually the Black Lake Education Center. He created that. And you can find pictures of him with Martin Luther King Jr. during his time.
That is awesome.
But I wanted to thank you both for having us on.
We appreciate it.
We appreciate it very much.
No, thank you all for coming on.
I'd like to close with just remembering, I try to remind myself every day that there are a few things I learned in Sunday school that were good, and that is we are our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper.
Exactly.
Doing to others as you'd have them doing to you, and that's what a union makes sure happens. If without a union, you can't make sure that what's done to you is also done to your neighbor and your coworker. That they're all, like you said, treated fairly and treated honestly. My dad told me, because like I said, he was a union man, that what's good for the UAW is good for America. Yeah.
Yep.
And I believe it.
Yeah.
Oh, go on, Randy.
No, I was just going to say again, we appreciate it. We appreciate the time and to be able to explain. We could probably go on and on. I know I can, but Becky's already hit me on the side, so there's that. But anyways, we do appreciate you inviting us on to let us explain a few things at least.
Yeah, and thank you all for being on here. And I'd love to have you on again to talk more in depth about things that we haven't got to reach out to.
Absolutely, especially about like healthcare and how unions help with that.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's another touchy subject. I'd love to get into that one because I've got.
That's a whole other episode.
Next time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my closing remarks, I did not grow up in a union household, didn't really know how important unions were until I started working. And my local teacher union has helped me in some situations where my voice was trying to be stamped down at my school.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned how important our unions are. And I'm so glad to be able to get some information about unions from you two. And like Becky said, we have to stand together. We should be one nation united, not divided, because we can't get anything done. I mean,
Right.
look at what's going on right now. They're divided and nothing's happening.
Right.
And we are
Nothing
falling.
good's happening. Yes.
If
Divided,
you
we're falling.
nothing's happening and it's hurting workers.
Yes.
It's
Exactly.
not hurting the corporations. It's not hurting these mega millionaires. It's hurting the people just like the four of us right here.
Yeah.
And we have to
Exactly.
stand up for each other.
Exactly. So, again, thank you all for being here. Unions are so important to working families in Kentucky and our nation. So, really glad to have you all. So, the next week's episode, we're just going to take a little bit of time and we're going to kind of dissect what has been going on here over the last couple weeks as far as the government shutdown, the healthcare fights, things of that nature. So we're going to dive into what's been going on with those issues. So I appreciate all of you all watching. Thank you all so much. And we'll see you again next week on Compton's Corner.
All right.
Thank you much.